on with the event. I'd like to begin by welcoming Sarah Munro, who I really hope is here because I can't see all. Everyone.
I'm here.
Hello, Sarah. How are you?
Hi, Richard. I'm well, thank you.
Sarah, as you probably know, is a director of the Baltic Centre for Contemporary Art, and she has a very busy day today. So I believe that she has to leave in about 15 minutes to go to a board meeting. So Sarah, thank you so much for fitting us in today and for being willing to talk to us about your plans for reopening and for your civic focus going forward. So over to you.
Thank you, Richard. And it was just so lovely. Well, partly starting with that music really had me in tears, I have to say. It was really, but I think that is definitely the best curated music to any Zoom I've been in over the last 3 months. So thank you. And I'm just thinking there about the words of Sam Cooke, actually. It's too hard living. And I think, in a sense, that's sort of framing a lot of how we're thinking as we come out of this lockdown period and we look at a lot of the work that we've been doing. And we have kept working. We have, Baltic physically as a building has been closed, but Baltic as a space of connecting people, of that sort of fabric of artists and supporting artists, supporting our communities has continued. And that has continued, like many cultural organisations, by being online and expanding and rethinking. And we've seen a lot of the work that we would have done in the building. So, for example, small example would be work that we do with families in the weekends, and we've kept those artists working but doing it digitally, and we've seen that those numbers greatly expand. But we've also really, really importantly, over the last few years, we've been developing a programme within our communities called Neighbourly. And actually one of the things that really sort of resonates with me through this whole period was, as the government announced and we were considering the lockdown, was thinking, but actually what do we do? What's our responsibility to communities that we've just established relationships, and then it's not neighbourly to disappear. So that really informed really early. We managed to get a series of creative packs out into our communities before we even physically closed the building. So that sort of, I think that's one of probably the most significant things that we're really thinking about as we come back, is that continuation of, I suppose the word that people are using is blended, but that real sense of actually how do we maintain our focus around both using digital, because actually for some there's a sort of element of that's led to democratization of access and to ideas and to therefore thoughts and discussions. This kind of Zoom call here where we can share is something that we've seen really expand and started to create conversations and enable people to participate in conversations that we couldn't have done by physically being in one place. So there are some positives. But I think stepping back a little bit, one of the things I suppose that everybody knows when you're in the arts is context is everything. And I think one of the things that we're really thinking about is that everything we do within Baltic or within the cultural sector sits within a much wider framing. And I think for us, that wider framing has really got to start with and be completely underpinned by thinking about the climate emergency. Because if we think this is a pandemic, this is just a taster of what could come if we don't really step up the inequalities that have come out of this or been laid more bare and have actually been exaggerated. So, you pump money into an unequal system and you create greater inequality. So I think that's one of the things, and we haven't got time to talk about it just now, but that sense of really thinking about more conducive to citizens, to communities, thinking about our economy, trying to shift thinking from extractivist to more circular economies. We're not going to shop our way out of this problem. So I think there's something that sits around some of that. We're looking at a lot of there are positives that have come despite the great negatives. I think the two things for us has been really thinking about that sense of increased solidarity, of community, people really rethinking and understanding their relationship to their neighbours and their local context. These things are really, I think a lot more people have felt a positive sense of that, and how do we maintain that and create the conditions to continue that. I think there are things around the creativity, you know, whether that's people in its widest sense thinking about cultural participation, whether it's people cycling bikes to taking part in making in their own homes. We've seen a real upsurge in people wanting to be part of that. And I suppose for me, the final really important wide context is around, you know, our cultural organisations are completely part of the fabric of a multifaceted kind of diverse society. So that process of sort of making, creating, interacting through art is the thing that can really feed and build resilience and kind of empathy within our community. So all of that stuff is I suppose the material, the ideas, the thoughts that we're bringing into our discussions within the organisation in terms of what we think and how we go forward with our programme. And I think a lot of that is, so we're very much thinking, we're not seeing this as a we just want to restart and reopen. We're more thinking actually, how do we use some of this to reset and to sort of reimagine, to deepen a lot of the work that we've already been doing. So things will look different. But I think within I've been thinking a lot about spirals and drawing spirals, and I read a great quote the other day that actually came from Louise Bourgeois, which I won't read out, but it's that sort of sense of us, you know, we can feel sometimes in this situation that we're spiraling down from something, but actually if you start at the inside, you're beginning to spiral up the way you're building a sense of coming out of something. And I think that's the overarching area that I'm interested in at the moment, is how do we actually use this as an opportunity, not so with our own responsibility for the things we have access to, so whether that's our resources, if you like, is how do we create value from that rather than extract value. This is a thing I'm beginning to think more and more about. How do we contribute to creating value within our communities? So things like, how do we use the people we have, how do we use our resources, whether that's the building, it's desks, it's a computer, it's an access to a library book, it's, you know, or is it the intangible stuff of the skills, the knowledge, the expertise that we have, and how do we really think about how those contribute within Newcastle Gateshead, contribute within England, contribute within the UK, keep the dialogue internationally, but really are underpinned by thinking about what also we need over the next I think we need to start thinking much more long term. So I would love to see this sort of restart conversation being aligned right across not just individual organisations and different art forms, but actually between culture, public health, you know, social work, education, learning. I think the challenge we have against all the problems that we have, and we see really so barely laid out and so, you know, made visible by the Black Lives Movement as well, is it's an educational challenge. So actually there's a lot of work that can be done through artists. The other massive challenge that we're a small part of contributing towards is how do we continue to support our artists. So we're really thinking about how do we support artists, creatives, the freelancers that are so much part of that wider sort of context, and how do we support and become the thing our communities really, really need us to be building on. So it's a great chance to say, what are we doing that really works? How do we get the resources to continue or enhance? And if that means stopping some things, we have those conversations. So for a lot of the things we're beginning to think about are, for example, how do we slow down to create the space for the deeper listening, for the bringing people together? And that is the joy. You know, one of the things is we've just sent out a survey, and it's on our social media. You'll find it, I think, on the Baltic Twitter. But actually just asking people for their opinions about returning. And we've been really, we sent it out about 48 hours ago. We've got over 1,000 replies, and about 25% of our responses, people want to come back right away. They're really missing some some culture, and I'm really aware that as visual arts organisations, we have a slightly different set of challenges, and they don't feel quite as overwhelming as some of the challenges that our colleagues are facing within theatre, cinema and concert halls, because the experience of coming into a gallery or a museum can be one that you do on your own. It can be one that actually is more valid in a much smaller group. So that sense of coming in, finding a space of contemplation, a space that's safe and secure. So we're really doing from very practical operational things, looking to, you know, when can we get reopened? How do we do that really safely? The government didn't think to let even the Arts Council know they were going to announce that art galleries were going to open on the 4th of July. So I don't think really any art galleries will be opening on the 4th of July. We need to make sure our communities feel safe, our visitors feel safe, our staff feel safe, but we will be reopening. We'll be hoping, I can't announce yet, we're going straight at 11 o'clock into a board meeting, but I'm very much hoping we'll have agreement on those dates, and we can start to share them with our wider teams. But I suppose those are the kinds of really, really broadly things that we're thinking about, is how do we help to contribute to that improvement of life is too hard living. Because I think for us, the really clear thing, I mean, for probably everybody, but it's this focus on inequality. We need to really, and that is something as a role in a wider sort of civic conversation, joined up with wider organisations, groups, alliances, I think becomes the thing about reimagining what that building better looks like, and how we start to all contribute towards that sort of shared conversation. I don't know if that felt very wide, and I don't know if there's more specific. I do feel really bad that I got asked to do this, and I already had our board meeting at 11, but I was really keen to be able to answer any initial questions if there were any.
Sarah, thank you. That was a great opening provocation. I think it frames the rest of the discussion really, really well. We've got such a tight schedule that I'm going to just ask you one question and just see where it goes.
I know it'll be a difficult question, it's Richard.
No, well, I don't know. I mean, in the current crisis, it seems like what seemed like was once a simple question always turns into a really complicated question. We're all having to rethink what we do and how we do it. But I was just wondering whether there are any things that you feel that Baltics learned during the lockdown and during thinking about the reopening that are going to potentially really impact on what you do in, say, the run up to Christmas. So a really short term thing that might change the way you practice. I know you're having to adjust your program, of course.
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges is always the timescales on things. So in terms of making and bringing in exhibitions, there's quite a lead up. There's a whole lot of, so we have 2 new exhibitions that we will be installing in September, and that's going to be a big challenge and a test for us to see how that works. So there's the kind of balancing between these are things that are longer term, they've been in planning, and then actually what are the very immediate things that we can do that will be different. And I think some of those will start to, so we're having to, for example, really rethink our public programme and how can that programme take place, or the performances when we're not able to bring people in big groups and big activities. So again, I think we're really beginning to think about, I think probably all our events will initially take place where we'll try and have small numbers physically together, but always enable that digital contribution, that digital access. I think, there's a lot of people with disabilities that have not been able to get to their homes and have not been able to access a lot of the work that's being done. And I think we're learning a lot, actually, from them about people's experiences and what's valuable and what's not. So it's difficult to say, immediately what some of those changes will be. But I think we're definitely trying to put an increased, we already do a lot of work within our local kind of context. The Baltic in some ways is having a very different conversation than some regional institutions, and certainly some of the London institutions, in terms of their audiences are primarily a tourism or a date. There's only 16% of Baltic's 500,000 visitors a year actually come from out with the region. So that doesn't really figure massively. We're not overly worried by having non-regional visitors for a while. That's not our priority. It's a kind of regional focus. So I don't know if I said anything too specific there. One of the really big things that we're looking at is around education and learning. So the schools programme, for example, has to be almost completely inverted. And I think that's the kind of thing that we're just still in the final stages of beginning exploring what those things will look like. Thank you
so much. We have been getting in questions, so thanks to the people who are raising a couple of questions, but I'm afraid we're going to have to move on and importantly let you go to your board meeting so that you can prepare to.
Thank you. And I'm so sorry not to hear our other speakers, but I will catch up with you on the recording later. Sorry, I have to run off.
And I'm hoping you some of the questions, because they're good ones around the quality and and also around technology and the barriers as well as the opportunities that tech can offer.
Yeah.
So thank you so
Yeah.
much, Sarah, and enjoy the rest of
Thank
your
you.
day. See you soon.
Sorry to leave.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So looking at the programme, it's crammed and we're already running slightly behind schedule, but I know that at least one of our next three speakers is planning to talk for slightly less than 10 minutes, which is what we were asking our speakers to do. And our first speaker, who I want to hand over very quickly to, is Harambee Sanders, who's the artistic director of Harambee Posadia, which is an amazing event, I know, because I've been. And I think that our plan is for 3 less than 10-minute long presentations, and then opening things up to the Q&A. So once again, I urge you all to note down some questions in the comments. So over to you, Harambee.
In the interest of time, I've written out my presentation, so I'm going to read my notes so I can stay on track. I'm a musician, educator, entrepreneur, activist, and culture producer. Through this presentation, I will wear 2 hats: the director of the social enterprise Harambee Posadia, and as a freelance musician. Next slide, please. Harambee Posadia's mission is to build a society that values, supports, and empowers artists while making Afrofusion arts accessible to as many people as possible and exposing people to new experiences. At a time when everyone is indoors, online and social media currency has become more important, and as a company who solely operates in person through live events, we are forced to reevaluate our future and make a step change that will allow us to modify how we deliver and connect with our audiences. Next slide, please. I am one half of the duet Ladies of Midnight Blue. We are an Afro-Latin percussion and brass duet that perform all over the world, facilitates workshops and residencies, and commissions artistic collaborations with artists for various projects. We are thinking about new ways of engaging with our audiences for both our company and as performing artists over the next year and beyond. New ways that will make us more sustainable overall. Next slide. Like most musicians and cultural organizations, all of our performances and events were either canceled or postponed. In the beginning of a lockdown, it felt like a productivity contest. As everyone scrambled for funding, we were all introduced to what seemed an endless number of online platforms, followed by the feeling that now we can accomplish all the tasks we haven't done for years, missing our families and spending time with friends, grieving and dealing with the shock of it all, craving live performances and interactions with real audiences. On the off day, any suggestion that I needed to do another thing other than survive felt crushing, and I wanted to hide. Consuming an overwhelming amount of information, virtual calls, panel discussions, webinars, free and ticketed online events, online access to everything and anything. But after a while, I got into the swing of things. I'm not thinking of this time period as having to reinvent myself, more like an upgrade and enhancement. It has been an unexpected opportunity to upgrade our personal skills and our emotional intelligence, because it is important for us to know what we're feeling and to be able to know what those emotions mean and how those emotions can affect other people around us in both our personal and professional lives. Being forced to disconnect from our fast-paced lives has always allowed many of us to realize that self-care is not a luxury, it's a necessity. We need our mind and body to be able to live out our life purpose with ease and grace. I've had the time to sit still, refocus, and get clear about my dreams and life purpose. Now is the time to be honest with yourself about where you are in your life. Have you asked yourself, am I happy? Am I content? Do I have everything I need to fully actualize? Is your job or business working in tandem with your aspirations? Are you engaging in honest collaborations and business partnerships? Now is the time for us to reimagine, refocus, readapt, and maybe restructure. As we progress and evolve, we have to upgrade and modify how we work and think. Technology is ever increasing, and we have to embrace the fact that we will have to digitize the cultural sector as a necessity. But the beauty in this is seeing it as an opportunity, an expansive versus limiting thought. an opportunity to revisit our purpose and the why we are doing the work we are engaging in, an opportunity to learn about new developments, an opportunity to figure out the new ways in which we will connect and flow with our newly acquired knowledge. We can scrutinize and adapt the efficiency of how our teams work and communicate, upgrade our online presence and social media sites, incorporate technology to enhance the scope of our compositions, our live online performances, and increase our offer for better sound quality through online platforms. We can also collaborate with tech companies to apply AR and VR into our offer. Recently, we've been seeing some very inspirational human behavior versus some of the worst. It is our role, well, I believe it is our role as culture producers and influencers to give our attention and support to the fight against systematic racism. Keeping silent, in my opinion, is far worse crime. We are living in times where we all need to speak up against racism and make our voices heard. The larger the crowd, the louder the noise. My mom always used to say to us, each one, reach one, teach one. Next slide. We are currently reprogramming and imagining the Darlow Drum Festival, which has now been moved to mid-September. With social distancing in mind, we have decided to make it a mix of live walkabout troops in Darlington City Center that will be streamed online, alongside online workshops, masterclass with both live and pre-recorded performances and commissions. We have to be able to identify and target new audiences and artists. Have fun exploring your options because the world just got smaller for many of us producers. We all have access to artists all over the world now and can consider programming artists we wouldn't have been able to get a hold of in the past. They're all home. Research different online marketing strategies. Take time to research and attend online events. Bring a pencil and a paper and take notes of what you like about the event. Take notes of things that you would do differently. Walkabout troops can help navigate the social distancing rules and prevent large crowds from gathering. A wonderful arts organization, Jack Drum Arts, which is based in County Durham, have been entertaining local residents with fantastic doorstep gigs. My business partner, Gili Suriel, also a visual artist, wants to actualize a community window exhibition. There are numerous ways of imagining and putting on mobile performances with various art forms. I'm working with the Northern Stage on a project that will bring live music to residents of Biker through a series of performances. We can reconnect local communities by bringing art to them directly. You can create personalized experiences by pre-shipping care packages or swag to your ticket holders. You can enhance the online performances by embedding slides, logos, visuals, or other supporting documents within your live streams. There's so much potential and multiple online platforms that are more than happy to host your event. You can stream or place your content online and reach a much broader audience than a physical event would have allowed. Things to remember when you're moving online: identify the right platform for your event. Encourage participation through questions, polling, and surveys. Identify a co-host to expand your reach and create engagement that lives past your online live stream. Online events play a key role in connecting us in a more sustainable way. Working in a virtual space has changed many of our behaviors. In regards to the environment, it has allowed us to live more in balance with nature than ever before, working from home and commuting less. This is the perfect time for us to start being generous, as Mark Calvert always says. Be generous, be generous, be generous. Ask folks for help in areas they have knowledge or more expertise in. Next slide. Finally, I would like to remind you all that worrying and focusing on what you do not want takes as much energy and time, if not more, than focusing on what you do want. You will attract the energy you are in harmony with, so do your best to be expansive with your thoughts and ideas and quiet that pesky negative self-talk. Thank you and have an amazing day.
Oh, thank you so much, Harambee. You put a huge smile on my face, no doubt on many other people's faces. That was heartwarming and inspiring and just absolutely wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to move straight on to our next speaker, and we'll come back for questions at about 11:15, fingers crossed. So our next speaker is Dr. Kate Craddock, who is the founder and festival director of GIFT. Are you there, Kate?
I am. I'm in here. I'm in the world. Can you hear me?
Yeah, over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Harambee. That was so inspiring as ever. Yeah, take a bow, take a bow. So lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I've just had the really unfortunate situation of a man in a hard hat banging on my door at 10 o'clock to say they were about to turn the internet off for 2 hours. So I've just done a mad dash across the city to my mum's house. So I'm at my mum's house in the attic. So it's all working. I'm here. But it means I'm probably not going to use my slides. If I've got time at the end, I will maybe show some images, but otherwise I'm just going to talk. So my name's Kate Craddock. I know there's quite a lot of people who are here who I know already. There's lots who I don't know, which is fab. It's great to meet you. I run a festival called GIFT, which stands for Gateshead International Festival of Theatre. It was founded in 2011 to address a very big gap in the cultural offer of the North East. There was no other kind of theatre festival or opportunity for contemporary experimental practice, performance practice, to be platformed at that time. So GIFT is a 3-day festival. It normally happens at the beginning of May, and it was set up really to try to kind of connect a lot of the sort of cultural regeneration that had happened along Gateshead Quayside, i.e. Baltic and Sage, with the more sort of commercially redeveloped town centre, or as it has now become. And I've always encouraged artists to work in quite different locations, so sited locations as well as kind of pubs, empty shops. And more recently, we've been working very closely with Baltic, and we work very closely with Gateshead Council, so Caedmon Hall above Gateshead Library, and also the old town hall used to be one of our main bases before the council lost it. So GIFT is really always a space for artists and audiences to come together. We prioritise nurturing dialogue and exchange. We celebrate experimentation, collaboration. It's a place for artist development and what I always term artists to kind of push at the parameters of their practice, whatever that might mean for them. GIFT is very much connected and embedded in networks of other international festivals, both regionally, nationally and internationally. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So something I wanted to think about in terms of moving forward out of where we are at the moment is around adaptability and organisations' ability to be adaptable. So GIFT has always been project funded, so we have no fixed venue, we have no fixed income. Therefore, we've always had to adapt every year. We've always been responsive to external factors, largely whether there's been funding or a lack of it. And so we've always worked as well in a location like in Gateshead, in an area that's been in transition and flux. So we've always had to access different partners, different venues every year. And this in the past has included us producing an online event in 2015 on Facebook and Twitter when we didn't get any funding, creating festivals and events of varying scales each year, and every year having to sort of start again and build new relationships with different partners, sites, venues, etc. So we've always been thinking, I suppose, about new ways of working and reimagining how to make work and present work. This is what we do every year. So in some ways, we were really well equipped this year, perhaps more able to adapt and respond to creating a festival during the pandemic. And we had more flexibility perhaps than our peers who were operating at a larger scale or in venues. So this year, GIFT went online. GIFT 2020 all took place over the 3 days that it was due to take place, but that all happened in an online space. It felt really important that we kept a commitment to presenting the work of all the programmed artists, especially at a time when artists' livelihood was being ripped from underneath them in the whole of the freelance sector. We wanted to maintain the idea of there being a 3-day festival, so events all happened in real time. We were aware that there was going to be a whole saturation of online content in March as soon as the sort of pandemic kicked off, so we ticketed our events to try to encourage people to commit, but also really importantly to establish a sense of community for the festival. It happened on a pay what you decide basis, so it was all via donations, which was how we would have operated in the real world as well. And we presented work across multiple platforms, the platforms that were right for the artists' work who were presenting work. And that happened in things like Zoom, but also audio works. There were durational works, a radio show that lasted 24 hours, a performance on Zoom for 14 hours, one-on-one, so performances that were for one audience member at a time. There were talks, panel discussions, workshops, etc. And the digital iteration was really designed to do the things that GIFT had always been celebrated for doing well. So for bringing people together, for offering a platform for artists, and for establishing a strong temporary festival community at this time when I think we really needed it most. We reached new audiences around the world. Our statistics show us that we reached thousands of people in over 40 countries. and that 77% of our audience at GIFT 2020 were new to the festival, which was quite staggering. So we're obviously still in a process of reflecting on this and considering how working online will feed into our future. Harambee has just spoken about some really great ideas and initiatives. So we've been working kind of creatively online for quite a long time. So this wasn't something new that was new for me or for the festival really. So it's worth just sort of contextualizing this a little bit. My own theatre performance practice stems from working actually this way, so sort of creating work in online environments. I wrote my practice-based PhD on how to collaborate using Skype as a tool to enable a sense of ensemble and collaborative performance practice. So it's something that very much has sat with me for quite a long time. And we'd also done this kind of digital version in 2015 in a smaller scale. And last year at GIFT in 2019, we had a Zoom panel conversation bringing in international directors and artists from around the world to engage with Northeast programmers and artists. So it was something that we've been building into the program for a while. And then this year, but we hadn't anticipated this year doing the whole thing online. But during the pandemic, we've been part of lots of ongoing conversations really about the future of festivals with other peers and how we can kind of incorporate this sort of blended idea that both Sarah and Harambee have just spoken about. And I've also been invited to speak on a number of panels really about sort of how to move a festival online. And I've always said, well, this isn't how to do it, but it's what we did as a way of framing our decisions. So I've had quite a lot of opportunity, I suppose, to reflect and consider, but I think it's absolutely impossible to be talking with any certainty at the moment about the future. So I made a short list of possibilities that I shared on a panel I spoke on in Copenhagen a couple of weeks ago about the future of festivals that I just wanted to share again now, which is very much just about GIFT. So for GIFT, the future might mean combining an online performance programme with live performance programming to create a purposefully hybrid, blended, integrated festival offer. It might mean working with fewer artists, but over much longer periods of time in deeper, more engaged ways through projects that connect local communities with international artists. It might mean asking audiences more explicitly what they want and creating something new and responsive to that. It might mean only programming work by local artists, but developing an online international audience for that work. It might mean rethinking the purpose of GIFT and the function of festival. It might mean the end of GIFT, that GIFT exists only as a memory for all the artists and audiences who've experienced it. It might mean moving to a biannual model, so holding a festival only once every 2 years. It might mean increased opportunities to programme work by international artists who can create their work online, but who might not otherwise be granted a visa to perform in the UK. It might mean business as usual, although I doubt it. It might mean a festival of artwork for one audience member at a time that's experienced at a distance. It might mean for finding corporate sponsorship or other modes of funding the festival to make it happen. It certainly means rethinking existing funding models. It might mean creating a festival of socially distant, site-specific, site-responsive outdoor performance. It might mean surviving with the support of a structure and a network of festivals who are local, national and international. And it might mean another list entirely tomorrow, next week or next month. But from that list that I made a couple of weeks ago, already what it does mean is that I'm working on a number of ideas with international artists that are going to be played out hopefully over the next 3 years, which involve connecting international and local artists and communities, and for this to happen over much longer extended periods of time and engagement. It does mean that I'm dreaming up ideas with other Northeast festivals, including with Harambee, who's just spoken, and with other festivals across the UK for working much more collaboratively over the next 12 to 18 months. It does mean I'm considering how GIFT can go back to its roots and encourage artists to work in site-responsive ways, creating work that's experimental for outdoor and non-conventional spaces. It does mean I'm looking to peers around the world who are already testing different ways of working over the coming months, people who are moving to kind of more integrated blended platforms and programs of work in Australia, Norway, Germany, Italy, etc. And it does mean I'm looking to learn from peers in countries where there's never been a government-funded arts council, peers that I've been talking to in Iran, in India, across the Middle East, across Africa, where being responsive to factors beyond their control is their norm. It's not something unprecedented. What can we learn through those conversations? And it does mean I'm considering how next year events at GIFT might be streamed online to maintain those national and international audiences that we reached this year, but also that those are streamed locally in public spaces across Gateshead, with works being made available for local audiences who might not have digital access in alternative spaces and locations. So just to respond specifically to the few questions that we were invited to speak to today, what will the work of our culture and creative sectors look like in the next 12 to 18 months? Well, I can only speak for GIFT, and I can say that this time's really going to be about survival. It's about being adaptable, about being responsive, about opening up, and about being collaborative, about working in far more networked, joined up ways, about reconsidering how we are structured and who we are working with and who we are reaching. How and where, and the next question, how and where can we reimagine how we program, make and present work? Well, there are obvious answers here that I've talked about moving work online and about creating more work for outdoor sites and about combining these ideas. But we need to consider more closely and explicitly what those opportunities are through working that way. And I'm really particularly excited about the potential to start programming more artists who might not potentially be given a visa to perform in the UK. So how could that reshape the programme for GIFT? I'm excited about taking some time and about working with artists over much longer periods of time. I really want to rip up and kind of reconsider what international travel looks like or means, both for the climate and for all the other reasons that we've been talking about. And when we do bring international artists here, that it's for much more embedded, deeper residencies that are for longer periods of time and connecting with artists and audiences who are based here. So can we think about new ways to work together? Well, yes, we can. And I've been advocating for networks for a long time, and more networked ways of working are emerging. So locally, there's a group of festivals called WTF, We Are in Time Festivals, who are in dialogue and will be launching some of our ideas quite soon. But also nationally and internationally, I'm working on some ideas that might be played out over the next 12 months about how we can be working together. I'm also really, really interested in how higher education and cultural sector can be working much more closely. And this is something that I'm exploring through the multiple roles that I personally occupy. And I think we can be so much better at sharing resources and speaking to each other. And I think events like this are a really great place to start. The final questions were, how do we engage existing and new audiences? Well, by moving our work online for GIFT, we were really able to engage existing and reach new audiences. Our statistics from GIFT 2020 that went online demonstrate this. But also, we can't accept that by moving things online, we become more accessible. This needs so much more interrogation and creative thinking. And how can we make things happen? Well, quite simply, by talking to each other, remaining connected, by being open to letting go of how we've always done things in the past. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Kate. What an amazing pair of talks we've had so far. And looking at the comments, I think people are agreeing with me that it's this really lovely mix of personal learning and reflection during lockdown and really practical steps that can be taken as we go forward, and finding the positive in what has been a very, very challenging time, and not least for creatives. So I'm going to move on now to our third speaker, who is Caroline Pearce, and she's a producer, creative consultant and coach. So over to you, Caroline.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
We can.
Great. So I will try to be brief. And I'm going to read for that reason. I'm Caroline Pearce. I'm a producer who these days specialises in programming and coaching. I'm going to talk about a principle of programming that through my career of quite varied collaborations, I identified and developed, and hopefully share how that can be useful to all of us. I can talk at length about all of this stuff with detailed examples of what's worked, what didn't, how we've tried and tested and learned, and how that might adapt for other contexts. So if you're interested in that, then absolutely contact me, because I'm doing a lot of thinking and considering of that, and up for conversations. But today I'm going to try and stay brief. Also, in terms of thinking about how that relates post-COVID, my context is that I went into this crisis off the back of 9 months of reflection and planning, which means that my thinking is sort of a step away from the daily challenges of how we readdress a thing that was planned. And so hopefully that little bit of distance, I think, can help to support the bigger conversation, and also I really relate to the people who have had to stop, and I know that some of my colleagues in organisations that are really going fast, that we have quite interesting kind of contrasting experiences. So my principle is called Programme for the People That You Know. And that could be controversial or it could be obvious. I'm going to talk a little bit about it. If you want or need to build a new audience group, first get to know them personally, and then be a brilliant, connected and artistically acute programmer to find them the work that will blow their minds, that speaks most exactly to the interests and preferences that drive their lives. And by bringing them the right work, will show them why you're so crazy about the art and will start to let them trust you. There are lots of models out there of programming, and there are many initiatives to get new audiences into theatre. Having spent my career working in theatre and art, programming shows, events, projects, workshops, conferences, and lots of other things, this is what I've learned, that effective programming starts with engagement. And once this principle is processed, it can be easily applied, in my opinion, to all venues, all scales, all types of artists and show and work, all types of events, all types of communities and audiences. And because it's a principle, not a toolkit, because it's a principle, not a toolkit, where toolkits are really inspiring and they're exciting and they're really useful, but sometimes it makes you focus on the pretty flowers and can be distracting when you're really busy, that you forget about the stem and the roots of the plant. Some models of programming that are sort of fairly conventional are venues programming their spaces for the audiences that the stats say are coming along, or some outreach programs that go the other way, where they meet groups in the places that they spend their time. The artists get to know the people and induct them into the art form and take them to see lots of shows and really absorb them in the experience. And both of those really work, like they're great. But for me, engagement-led programming is a middle ground, and it's that principle that can be applied that relies on mutual respect. In my experience of programming a show that I love and hoping to get an audience for it, it can be exhausting. Sometimes it works, but the risk is high. Occasionally, a piece of work is wonderful enough that I feel it's worth it, but on reflection, every time that I've actually done that, there's been some element of the show that's been unsatisfying because of a mismatch between the show or the artists and the audience that we're reaching. Whereas when I've worked with groups of non-programmers and community members, so if I've done it where I've gone to the community and worked with enthusiasts or business people and tried to bring them on board, I've often stumbled because it's harder work persuading them how to become a professional programmer, because they haven't chosen that. And sometimes when you're just going to them, they begin to suspect your motivations. And engagement-led programming is a way of embedding mutual trust and respect, with the programmer bringing their expertise and experience, and the communities bringing their interests, preferences and contacts, with everyone working in their comfort zone and a clearer understanding of why. I think this is going too long. I'm going to skip the next bit and go on to the how I think it's going to work post-COVID, because basically it's about understanding your context, understanding your the work, because you as a programmer really know the work. You get to understand the context and you match make. In terms of COVID, no one really understands the audiences. Like, in some ways, we're all learning. We all have to go out there and talk to the people who used to come, or find new people. And by thinking about that as a fundamental, then I think that that is a first step in terms of rebuilding and enabling us all to rebuild together collectively and differently.